Hi everyone. In this short video I will explain how to conduct a framing session. I'm Guido Stompff, professor at Inholland University of Applied Sciences. To start with, let's summarize what a frame is and what a reframing process is. A frame is in essence how you view and interpret the world around you. What you see and what you don't see, what you consider good, what you consider bad, what you consider problematic, and what you consider business as usual. The thing is, we all look at the world from our own personal frames, and they may be quite different. And even when you're a very objective person, you will discover you are always framing the world around you. Now, the most important thing is you cannot think outside of a frame. There's always some frame operating, but you can become aware of your frame and become aware of frames of others. Once you're aware of a frame, you can decide which frames you adopt to explore, for instance, in a design thinking session. And you can also develop new frames, frames that are novel. And that is what a reframing session is all about, to develop alternative frames. In this course, I will introduce two ways to develop novel frames. There are many more ways, but these two I had good experiences with. The first is a brainstorm session with a group of people. Always get a group of people together. And what you do is you're gonna develop new frames and you choose which ones are most inspiring. The easiest way to explain it is by means of an example. Let's imagine that we have a framing session to do something about the loneliness among the elderly. In Western society, the number of elderly people who are feeling extremely lonely is growing rapidly. Now, how can we frame this? The first step is just to gather ideas and problems that people are shouting out. When you ask them, how can we frame this situation? They will shout things like, we need robots, or how about a pet service, or maybe we should have a phone number with professionals, or maybe we should have medication. You can do it in many ways. You can name many different things. Now, the important thing is there's no wrong, there is no right. Just let them shout anything and write it down. Do it in a team so that you get very diverse perspectives on the situation at hand. And regardless whether it's a solution that is named or that's a problem that is named or it's just something which is named that seems relevant, just write it down and do it for some time, like 20 minutes. The second step is that you cluster those ideas and problems and things that are named. And you ask people what belongs to each other and how will we name this line of reasoning. So they will put everything together which has something to do with that mobilizing friends and family, for instance, or they categorize everything that has to do with giving some purpose to the everyday life of the elderly. These things, when you group them together and name them, basically is naming the frame that is on top of it, which frames it all, the ideas. Now, some people can take much time thinking about what it is and what should be put together, but do it very intuitively. Do it a little bit loose. It's more important about plausibility, that you say, well, I don't know exactly why, but I feel that these two things belong together. They have all something to do with, for instance, relations. And if you can't agree on something, or if you are indecisive yourself, just make two clusters. Don't worry about it. It works. Once you have these clusters, it's time to choose. Which one do we think is most inspiring? And actually, which ones are most inspiring? Because you have to choose multiple frames to proceed with. There are many ways to do this voting. You can try to argue your way out, or you can discuss it, but I had really good experience with good old voting. Just give everyone, let's say, 5 votes and let them vote. If they put it all on one frame because they think it's very inspiring, then that frame will become chosen probably, or when 2 people do it like that. But you can also decide to spread your votes across multiple frames. Point is, those frames that resonate, that seem most interesting, that are inspiring, they will pop up automatically, just like that, because everyone is voting. Now, very important, once you end this, say thank you to everyone and say which frames you're going to take along to the next stage when you're going to develop them. Never settle on one, always take at least two when you're in a very short time, but preferably pick 3 or 4 or even 5 different frames to explore. Another way of developing frames, a more difficult one, but also a very inspiring one, is by developing metaphors. A metaphor is seeing something as something else. You make a comparison which is inspiring and which helps you to rethink what the situation is you're looking at. The example I have here is that the world has something to do with climate change and stuff like that. The world is shown as melting ice. It's melting away. That is a metaphor. Now, how can a metaphor help you to reframe, to come with a novel frame on a problematic situation? Let's use the same example, loneliness among the elderly. We all know that work offers purpose to life. It gives you some meaning why you are doing things. And also they give people social context. You meet people, you bump into people, you have chats and things like that. So in a way, work is beneficial to reduce the feelings of loneliness. However, the elderly are not working anymore. Now, maybe they're not working, but maybe as a metaphor work, or more specifically, for instance, a garage or a repair shop, could be very beneficial to reframe the issue of the loneliness among the elderly. Because in repair shops or in garages, people bump into each other, and especially the elderly very often have skills that, and time, by the way, that are beneficial if they could use them for others. And the thing is that people will come to them, will have a chat, and they can do things that they are skilled in, and it gives them a sense of purpose. Now, the repair shop is a great metaphor, but you can extend it as well. There are other elderly people who are not so good in repairing things maybe, but they have other skills. And the question is in this metaphor is how can we put these skills to use that which makes values to other people so that the other people will come to them. So we discussed 2 ways to develop novel frames, by means of a brainstorm session, a framing session, or by developing some powerful metaphors. Which I think is most important is that you never stop with having one frame. Always explore several different frames, like the student is doing here. She's presenting 2 frames next to each other on a poster. And by means of presenting multiple, we can discuss what the impact is of these different frames, of these different perspectives. Once you settled on inspiring frames as a start for your design process that will continue for a long time, you will discover that actually it's just the beginning of a long road, a long winding road with many small steps, because you will frame and reframe often during your design process. It's the nature of design thinking. You frame, you do an experiment and you reflect. You do an experiment and you reflect. And it's possible that you reflect, you need a new frame. That's the way it is. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in another course.